Before you pick up that old copper penny and toss it aside like it's nothing, pause for a moment, because hidden in the history of the United States Mint are a few legendary Lincoln cents that look old, worn, scratched, and completely ordinary, but their value is anything but ordinary. These pennies have survived world wars, the Great Depression, pocket after pocket, generation after generation, and today they might be hiding inside your home. In this video, we're uncovering the top 3 old Lincoln 1-cent coins that collectors chase with obsession. Coins that slip through time unnoticed. Coins that turned pocket change into thousands of dollars. Coins that people threw away without realizing they were holding a tiny piece of treasure. Get ready, because each of these pennies carries a secret, an error, a rarity, or a minting mystery that transformed them from simple cents into powerful collectibles. And trust me, the number 1 coin on this list isn't just rare. It's one of the most shocking discoveries ever found in everyday change. So hold on to your seat, zoom in on every detail, and don't blink, because your next valuable penny could be hiding right under your fingertips. The story of the 1983 Lincoln cent begins in the aftermath of one of the most significant compositional changes in modern United States coinage. In 1982, the Mint made a major transition from producing Lincoln cents in the traditional bronze alloy to a new copper-plated zinc composition that dramatically altered both the physical characteristics and the minting behavior of the coin. The decision to switch was driven by rising copper prices, which made it increasingly expensive to strike each 1-cent piece. As the Mint entered 1983, it was still refining and adapting to the challenges of the new planchets, and this set the stage for a year filled with unique production traits, unexpected varieties, and a deeper evolution of the venerable Lincoln cent series. The 1983 cent carried forward Victor David Brenner's classic design, first introduced in 1909, featuring President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the familiar Lincoln Memorial reverse, created by Frank Gasparo. The design remained unchanged from previous years, but behind that familiar appearance, the metal change created new dynamics in striking quality and durability. The copper-plated zinc planchet consisted of a core of 995% zinc coated with a thin layer of copper, and this construction sometimes caused issues such as weak strikes, plating bubbles, or uneven surfaces. These problems were not universal, but they were common enough in 1983 to make the coins of this year particularly interesting to collectors and researchers. Production levels in 1983 were substantial as the Mint worked to meet the national demand for small-denomination coinage. After the transition year of 1982, the Mint needed to ensure a steady flow of the new composition cents, and facilities in both Philadelphia and Denver produced hundreds of millions of pieces. The Philadelphia Mint struck coins without mint marks, as was customary, while the Denver Mint continued using the D-Mint mark, and both locations generated large quantities, ensuring that the 1983 cent would become common in circulation. Despite their abundance, however, the coins from this year began attracting attention for reasons far beyond their mintage totals. One of the most compelling aspects of the 1983 Lincoln cent is the appearance of several major varieties and errors which have become highly sought after by collectors. Perhaps the most famous is the 1983 double die reverse. This variety shows strong doubling on the lettering, particularly in the words 1 cent and United States of America, and in some examples, the doubling is so bold that it can be seen with the naked eye. The cause of this variety was a misalignment during the die creation process, and only a limited number were produced, making it one of the most valuable and desirable modern Lincoln cent varieties. The excitement around this double die has continued for decades and has become a highlight of any discussion about the coins of 1983. Another captivating element of the 1983 cent is the emergence of transitional errors involving the bronze planchet. Although the Mint had officially switched to zinc cores in 1982, a very small number of bronze planchets accidentally remained in the minting system and were struck in 1983, resulting in wrong planchet errors. These extremely rare bronze composition, 1983 cents, weigh noticeably more than the standard zinc version and have become legendary among collectors. A genuine 1983 bronze cent can command enormous attention in the numismatic world, and finding one in circulation is considered nearly miraculous. The Philadelphia Mint also produced a 1983 proof set exclusively at the San Francisco facility, but unlike earlier years, no proof cents were struck in bronze. By 1983, the copper-plated zinc format had completely taken over all varieties of the coin, including proofs. The Mint was still adjusting its methods to strike crisp, high-quality proof coins on these newer planchets. And while the surfaces of 1983 proof cents generally show sharp detail, some examples reveal small plating issues that reflect the early learning period of working with the new metal composition. Throughout 1983, the Lincoln cent served as the most widely used coin in everyday transactions. Its role in commerce remained essential, and millions of Americans handled these new zinc-based cents without realizing the long-term significance of the transition they represented. The lighter weight and slightly different feel of the new coins were noticeable to some, but the average person gave little thought to the dramatic changes occurring behind the scenes at the Mint. Yet, for collectors and historians looking back, the 1983 cent marks a pivotal moment in the evolution of U.S. coinage technology and economics. In the decades that followed, the introduction of the zinc cent, the Mint continued refining its techniques and improving quality control. The 1983 issue stands as an early snapshot of that journey, capturing both the challenges and the breakthroughs that came with the new materials. Over time, these coins have developed a character of their own. They represent a transitional period, but also stand as distinct artifacts tied to a specific historical shift. When collectors seek out high-quality business strikes, error coins, or the famous double die variety, they are engaging with a piece of coinage history shaped by economic pressures and technological experimentation. The year 1983 also reflects the broader story of American numismatics during the late 20th century, a period marked by gradual modernization, changing production strategies, and increasing attention to the presence of errors, varieties, and unique mint characteristics. The Lincoln cent for that year became an anchor point for these developments, and its varieties and minting traits have continued to inspire research debates and new discoveries. As numismatists study die states, weight variations, metallurgical details, and production anomalies, they uncover deeper layers of understanding about how the Mint operated during these transformational years. For a 2-hour documentary exploring the 1983 Lincoln cent, the narrative can dive into each of these elements in detail: the economic background that forced the copper-to-zinc transition, the technical challenges faced by the Mint, the discovery and authentication of major varieties, the process by which transitional errors occur, and the lasting legacy of these coins. From interviews with collectors to examinations of real examples under magnification, the story of the 1983 cent becomes rich with educational and historical value. It is a journey into a year of innovation, unforeseen surprises, and coinage evolution that continues to fascinate both experts and casual enthusiasts alike. As the story of the 1983 Lincoln cent continues, it becomes clear that this coin not only reflects a single year's production, but also mirrors broader patterns forming across the entire minting landscape of the early 1980s. During this era, the United States Mint was undergoing a quiet but significant transformation, adapting to economic pressures, refining industrial processes, and modernizing equipment in order to meet the country's growing demand for circulating coinage. The shift to copper-plated zinc planchets was only one part of this evolution, and the 1983 cent is an excellent case study of how the Mint balanced innovation with tradition while still presenting a coin that looked virtually identical to those produced decades earlier. The story of the 1984 Lincoln cent unfolds as part of a long numismatic tradition stretching back to the early 20th century when the Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By the time 1984 arrived, the coin had already undergone major transformations in composition minting technology and national purpose. The 1984 issue emerged during a period of economic and political change in the United States, and the cent's design and composition mirrored the shifting priorities of the nation. The year 1984 marked the second full year in which the United States Mint produced circulating Lincoln cents made almost entirely of zinc with a thin copper plating. This change had taken place in 1982, when rising copper prices forced the mint to abandon the long-used bronze alloy that had composed the cent for generations. The decision to adopt the copper-plated zinc planchet was significant, because it altered the weight manufacturing process and long-term durability of the coin. By 1984, the Mint had refined its procedures for working with zinc-based planchets, and production became smoother and more consistent. The obverse of the 1984 cent still featured Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the longest-running design in U.S. coinage history. Even in 1984, the profile of Lincoln remained a symbol of national unity and historical reflection, connecting Americans to the legacy of the Civil War president. However, in 1984, the Mint's equipment and engraving processes occasionally produced subtle anomalies, causing coins from this year to attract the attention of collectors. One of the most discussed aspects of the 1984 cent involves the famous doubled ear variety, which shows extra doubling on Lincoln's ear. This variety was created through a work hub or die issue, where hubbing misalignment produced an extra impression on the master die. The doubled ear cents became a highlight for collectors seeking errors from the zinc era, and the variety added intrigue and collectability to the 1984 series. The reverse design still displayed Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial, which had been used since 1959. On coins from 1984, the memorial design reflects the precision and technological standards of the early computer-assisted era of U.S. minting. At this time, the Mint continued upgrading its presses and quality control systems to handle the new planchet composition. Despite these improvements, the softer copper coating over zinc sometimes made cents more prone to plating bubbles or blistering, which became characteristic flaws of the mid-1980s Lincoln cents. Production in 1984 was extremely high as the nation's economy demanded large quantities of circulating coinage. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of cents, while the Denver Mint produced an even larger total. These high mintages reflected strong consumer spending patterns and an economy driven by both cash transactions and retail expansion. Although the cent was already losing buying power by this time, Americans still relied on it for everyday purchases and change systems. The Mint continued striking cents in massive numbers through the decade because eliminating the denomination was still politically controversial. Collectors today view the 1984 Lincoln cent as an essential part of the zinc era. Its place in numismatic history is defined not only by its high mintage, but also by its errors, varieties, and transitions in production technology. The doubled ear variety remains one of the most famous varieties of the entire 1980s. Over the years, the 1984 cent became a common find in circulation, but high-grade examples, particularly those with strong mint luster and clean copper plating, are increasingly difficult to locate because zinc cents tend to corrode or suffer environmental damage over time. When examining the cultural environment of the United States in 1984, broader historical forces also shaped the context of the coin. The nation was experiencing political shifts, the continuation of the Cold War, and technological developments in industry and communication. The U.S. Mint itself was adapting to computerized engraving systems, automated planchet handling, and modernized quality assurance methods. The 1984 cent is therefore not just a coin, but a representation of the period's economics, technology, and national identity. For a 2-hour documentary-style presentation, you can explore additional layers such as the historical evolution of the Lincoln cent from 1909 to 1984, the reasons behind changing the composition in 1982, the minting process at Philadelphia and Denver during the 1980s, the spread of zinc cents through the economy, the discovery and certification of the doubled ear variety, the long-term impact of zinc coins on collectors and circulation, and the symbolic importance of Lincoln's image in American culture. The 1984 Lincoln cent remains a coin of transition, a link between the bronze past and the modern zinc era, and its history demonstrates the intricate relationship between economics, technology, and national symbolism in United States coinage. As we continue exploring the deeper historical landscape surrounding the 1984 Lincoln cent, it becomes clear that this coin stands at the intersection of tradition and modernization. To understand the significance of the 1984 issue, one must look back at how the United States Mint gradually evolved through the 20th century and how the Lincoln cent itself adapted to economic pressures and changing minting technology. By 1984, the cent was no longer simply a low-denomination coin, but a reflection of decades of experimentation challenges and institutional changes within the mint. The shift to copper-plated zinc only 2 years earlier had reshaped nearly every stage of cent production. Prior to 1982, the mint relied on bronze planchets made primarily of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc. Bronze had been used for most Lincoln cents since 1909, and the metal's workability proved ideal for capturing fine details, in Brenner's portrait and the later Lincoln Memorial design. However, rising copper costs in the 1970s and early 1980s pressured the mint to find less expensive alternatives. The economic environment of the early 1980s, including inflation, fluctuating metal markets, and shifting industrial demands, forced reconsideration of long-standing practices. By the time the 1984 cent was struck, the mint staff had gained more experience with zinc planchets, which were lighter, more affordable, and easier to mass-produce but also more delicate. This delicacy of the zinc core contributed to the development of certain weakness issues in the finished coins. The plating process required a highly controlled environment so that the thin copper coating bonded smoothly to the zinc surface. Even minor imperfections during the electroplating stage could lead to blistering, cratering, or bubbling as the coins aged. Many cents from the mid-1980s exhibit surface irregularities that bronze cents rarely experienced. The 1984 cent is therefore an important window into the challenges of this transitional era. During this period, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were continuously refining their equipment. The presses used to strike the coins were undergoing updates to handle the different hardness and rebound characteristics of zinc planchets. The engraving divisions were also exploring new technologies, including early computer-aided design systems, which promised more precision but required extensive testing. These tools began altering the way dies were created. In earlier decades, die engraving was almost entirely manual, with artists cutting details into the master hubs. By 1984, there was still heavy human involvement, but digital assistance was emerging and influencing details subtly seen on the coins. The doubled ear variety found in 1984 is one of the most studied examples of a hub doubling from the zinc era. The doubling did not occur from striking, but from a die creation issue, meaning the double details were present on every coin struck by that die. This variety gained attention in the years after release, when collectors' sorting rolls noticed the unusual additional outline around Lincoln's ear. The discovery provided insight into the mint's transitional period and highlighted the complexity involved in die preparation even as technology advanced. Minting volumes continued to surge through the 1980s due to the nation's reliance on coin currency in retail business, public transportation, vending machines, and everyday transactions. The push for increased production meant the mint had to maximize efficiency and minimize waste. Because zinc was drastically cheaper than copper, replacing the traditional bronze cent saved millions of dollars in metal expenses. The 1984 cent plays an important role in illustrating this cost-saving strategy, which laid the foundation for future debates about the future of the cent itself. The story of the 1985 Lincoln cent unfolds across a landscape shaped by decades of American history, changes in minting technology, and the evolving identity of the nation's smallest denomination coin. To understand the 1985 issue, you must first imagine the long journey of the Lincoln cent since its introduction in 1909, when it became the first United States coin to feature a real historical figure, rather than a symbolic representation of liberty. This bold change marked a new era in American coinage, and it set the stage for how the coin would continue to evolve, including the version struck in 1985, a year that may appear ordinary on the surface, but is filled with important developments behind the scenes. By the time 1985 arrived, the Lincoln cent had already been through multiple transformations in design, composition, and production methods. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln, created by Victor David Brenner in 1909, continued to dominate the obverse, and the wheat ears reverse had long since been replaced by Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design introduced in 1959. What many collectors may not realize is that by 1985, the cent was only 3 years into a dramatic shift in composition that had changed the feel, sound, and even the aging process of the coin. In 1982, rising copper prices forced the United States Mint to abandon the heavy copper planchets that had been used for decades. The Mint adopted a new standard, a zinc core clad in a thin copper layer, creating a coin that looked the same but weighed far less and behaved differently in circulation. This change continued to shape the coins of the mid-1980s, including the 1985 issues. As production of the 1985 Lincoln cent began, the Mint's facilities in Philadelphia and Denver took on the task of striking hundreds of millions of pieces for use in the American economy. These coins were produced during a period when the country relied heavily on cash. Transactions and millions of Lincoln cents changed hands daily in shops, gas stations, restaurants, and households. Although the 1985 cent saw no dramatic redesign or commemorative purpose, it reflects the economic climate of the time. The United States was emerging from the economic turbulence of the previous decade, and inflation had influenced the uses and perceptions of low-value currency. Despite their small value, Lincoln cents remained an essential part of daily commerce, and the Mint maintained enormous production levels to meet demand. Collectors often look at 1985 as a significant year for die varieties quality control and the overall condition of cents leaving the Mint. During this period, the Mint continued refining its die preparation methods, which affected the sharpness of details on Lincoln's portrait, especially the hair coat and facial features. Because the copper-plated zinc planchets were softer than the older copper planchets, small die issues became more noticeable on the finished coins. This is part of why some 1985 cents display minor plating bubbles, die wear signs, and subtle striking inconsistencies that collectors carefully study today. These small imperfections tell stories of the minting process, and they help modern collectors understand how the switch to zinc affected coin production in real time. When examining the 1985 cent, it is also important to recognize how the coin reflects American culture in the mid-1980s. It was a time of technological growth, cultural shifts, and renewed patriotism. The Lincoln Memorial reverse symbolized national unity and historical reflection, while Lincoln himself stood as a reminder of leadership integrity and the enduring American spirit. Though most citizens handled these coins without a second thought, the cent remained an everyday connection to national history, carried in pockets across the country from school children, saving pennies in jars to adults using them at grocery stores and vending machines. From a numismatic perspective, the 1985 Lincoln cent also plays a role in the timeline of mint mark usage. Philadelphia minted the 1985 cent without a mint mark, as was customary, while Denver coins bore the familiar D below the date. The absence of a San Francisco business strike cent in 1985 also reflects the mint's shifting priorities. San Francisco was primarily producing proof sets rather than general circulation coins. Proof cents from 1985 carry the S mint mark and are known for their sharp detail-mirrored surfaces and high quality, which makes them popular among collectors who appreciate the contrast between proof and circulation strike coins. As the coin entered circulation, collectors decades later began to examine 1985 cents not merely as spending change but as artifacts of a transitional era in minting history. They studied the way the copper plating reacted to wear, how uncirculated examples displayed luster, and how the minting techniques of the time impacted long-term preservation. These studies help modern numismatists understand broader patterns across 1980s coinage, since many of the issues that appear on 1985 cents also appear on neighboring years, but with subtle differences that create a fuller picture of mint operations. When telling the story of the 1985 Lincoln cent in a 2-hour narrative, you can explore the way this coin fits into economic history, technological evolution, national symbolism, and collecting culture. You can expand on how the mint's transition to new materials changed production strategies, how inflation influenced public attitudes toward the cent, how condition rarity and minting quirks shaped the modern market, and how even a common coin like the 1985 cent holds a meaningful place in the broader legacy of American coinage. This coin serves as a reminder that every year, every minting decision, and every technological shift adds a new chapter to the ongoing history of the Lincoln cent coin that has endured for more than a century and continues to fascinate coin collectors, historians, and everyday Americans alike. As the story of the 1985 Lincoln cent continues, it becomes clear that this coin represents a bridge between the older traditions of American minting and the emerging technologies that would define the late 20th century the United States Mint. In the mid-1980s, was navigating a landscape shaped by budget pressures, equipment modernization, and changing public expectations. The Lincoln cent was at the center of these challenges because it was the most heavily produced denomination, requiring vast quantities of planchets, dies, and labor. The 1985 coinage reflects the mint's efforts to balance speed and quality during a period when minting machinery was being upgraded and automation was becoming more widespread. These changes influenced everything from die longevity to strike consistency, and the effects can be observed on many surviving 1985 cents. To appreciate the deeper history behind this year, you must also consider how the public regarded the cent at this time. Although the coin remained a staple in everyday transactions, its purchasing power had declined dramatically since the early 20th century. By 1985, the value of 1 cent could no longer buy most goods on its own. Yet the coin persisted, out of tradition habit, and the mint's belief that small change still played a role in cash-based economies. The debate over whether to eliminate the cent resurfaced in the early 1980s, but each time, public sentiment and political caution preserved it. As a result, the 1985 cent belongs to an era when the coin's practical value was shrinking, even as its cultural presence remained strong. Another important layer of the 1985 Lincoln cent story involves the ongoing change in metal, composition that had begun only a few years earlier. The zinc core, with its thin copper surface, presented new challenges for quality control because even small imperfections during manufacturing could lead to long-term issues such as plating bubbles, surface blistering, or uneven color. These coins aged differently from the older copper issues, developing distinctive wear patterns and tone changes. Collectors examining 1985 cents today often notice muted surfaces or subtle distortions that are characteristic of early copper-plated zinc production. These traits became part of the identity of the era's cents and help explain why certain years, including 1985, attract attention from specialists who study how these coins deteriorate over decades. The die-making process of 1985 also contributes fascinating details to this narrative. The Mint was continuing to refine its hub and master die preparation methods, attempting to achieve greater uniformity between mints and reduce the frequency of die failures. Even so, the high demand for cents meant that dies were pushed hard, and many developed signs of fatigue producing coins with soft details, especially in Lincoln's beard jawline and hair. Reverse dies also exhibited progressive wear, visible in the fine lines of the Lincoln Memorial, the statue of Lincoln inside the building, and the spacing of the steps. These wear characteristics provide valuable clues for numismatists, who study die life cycles and use them to reconstruct the stages of production for specific years. The 1985 Lincoln cent also holds a place in the history of mint packaging and collector products. Proof sets from 1985 were popular among collectors who enjoyed the polished surfaces, sharp details, and deep mirror fields of the S Mintmark cents produced in San Francisco. These proof coins offer a stark contrast to the circulation strikes, showing what the design could look like under ideal, minting conditions. They also serve as historical benchmarks, helping collectors evaluate how design features should appear when fully struck and preserved. The enhancements used for proof coins, such as specially treated dies and higher striking pressure, reveal the artistic potential of the Lincoln cent design during the mid-1980s